Thank you. All right. So, hello, and thank you for joining us for the February 2024 Lunch and Learn with WiscWeb. I am Jenna Klinner, and I'm joined here today by several members of the WiscWeb team, including Matt Goins, who just waved to you, and you'll hear from later today. See, here is the agenda for our session today. We'll start with some quick updates and reminders for you. Next, we'll do a little review of our current roadmap. Just going to bring this screen over here. Just one sec. Next, we'll do a little review, or sorry, then we'll touch on some news related to WordPress's block editor, which is commonly referred to as Gutenberg. And finally, we'll wrap up with some very exciting demos today. So first, updates and reminders. We only have a couple here. First is a reminder about the accessibility policy and the digital liaison network. So if you folks haven't heard, we are in phase 1 of the digital accessibility policy, which is meant to address digital document accessibility. Um, I do have a link here, but I'm going to, whoops, open up some information. There's some great information on the it.wis.edu site. I'm going to throw the link in the chat here. And I'll just kind of talk through a couple things for you. Did that work, Matt? You're shaking your head. Oh, you
I
already
was
got it.
shaking my head. Yeah, I
Perfect.
was gonna say
Matt's on it. He has
yes, I've
all the
got all the
links.
bullet points.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So yes, we're in phase 1, digital document accessibility. There are a few phases for the policy. That information should be in the links there. There's great documentation, as I said, on the it.wisc site. Each group on campus should also have a digital accessibility liaison. You can look up your liaison on that web page. There's also a link in the chat for you if you're not sure who that is. And in case it's helpful, there is also documentation for how to make your digital documents specifically more accessible as well. So please do start to dig into that and reach out to your digital accessibility liaison with any questions that you may have. Second is an update about the slowdowns that we experienced last week. We did email about this, but in case you didn't see, we wanted to give a little overview. It turns out that this was related to thousands of requests coming into our sitemaps by Applebot. This essentially functioned as a distributed denial of service attack. Applebot was sending traffic to our sitemaps every hour on the half-hour mark. And at the half hour, you may have noticed a little bit of slowness or even a 500 error when navigating to your live view of your site or while editing, primarily last week, but I think maybe even Monday morning of this week. The ultimate resolution was that we literally completely blocked the Applebot traffic. That was what was required in order to get things working correctly, unfortunately. So this was an incredibly difficult issue to troubleshoot for a couple different reasons. Any testing that we did had to wait until the issue came up every half hour. So we'd implement a fix and then wait an hour to see if it worked, which is not normally how you have to work when you're troubleshooting an issue. So that was really painful. This was a distributed attack, even though it might be accidental on Apple's part. There were hundreds of IPs making only a couple of requests, so that it was just really challenging to figure out what was happening. And just noting here that Applebot is considered a good bot and would not get blocked by some of the bot protection rules that we have set up in our web application firewall that would normally stop this sort of activity. So like we wouldn't have thought that something like this could have been happening. I'll pause there. I'm not sure how many folks experienced the slowness or had issues last week, but I'll pause in case there are any questions with that. Check the chat here. What is Applebot? Applebot is Apple's search engine bot, I believe it's called. Let me know, devs, if there's like a more specific explanation we want to give, but it looks like Andrea threw a little bit. Oh yeah, Apple's search crawler, I should say. Andrea threw some information in the chat there. Thank you for that link. Thank you, Mark, for the kudos. It was amazing sleuthing. Our team did a great job. Uh, Snaps all around for the developers on the team who had to investigate this issue. It was very challenging. So I'm really proud of the team for that. And apologies to anyone if they did experience any slowness during this time, but we were very dedicated to fixing the issue. And it looks like Matt also gave props to the specific folks on the team, Scott Burry, Andrea Roning, and Andy Summers for digging into it. Looks like there aren't any questions at this time, so I'm going to go to our next slide here. What is on our roadmap? We're making an effort to share details of our roadmap with all of you in these lunch and learn sessions. Let's go back to my slides here so that you can actually see that. Of course, I lost my, sorry folks, uh, presentation notes when I switch, which is part of the trouble of showing multiple tabs. All right, so we are trying to make an effort to show you what is on our roadmap so you have insight into what we're working on. Um, we are working on the UW theme 1.30.0 release. We're doing a demo of two of the new features for that release today. One is the image only carousel and one is padding between content layouts. Um, Matt and I are also working on listening sessions. So a lot of the feedback that we got over the last couple of months is that it would be helpful to dig deeper into certain topics. And we've kind of identified some of those topics, and we're going to slowly work on adding listening sessions for them. I'm working on a site redesign session, and Matt is working on a website ideation session that will likely have some specific information about building lab and research sites. Um, our instance of MySQL is in need of updating. So with the Applebot issues last week, that was delayed a little bit, but we're delving back into it. On the technical debt slash process improvement side of things, we're doing some cleanup of our vhost files in our Apache setup. That's technical, but just kind of consider it normal website technical debt. This will allow us to move towards some really key infrastructure improvements. Also, in the vein of cleanup, we're tackling some child theme cleanup. So we've got a couple child themes that can be retired, or maybe some outdated code can be reviewed. So we're cleaning those up as well. Something that we're always working on is improvements and updates to our AWS infrastructure. AWS is Amazon Web Services, and that's sort of how we're hosted in WiscWeb. Um, that service is constantly evolving, which means that there are new tools and features being added all the time, and we can kind of like learn about them and take advantage of them. But it also means that we're kind of constantly digging into this space. Um, so we're doing that to just ensure that we're giving you the best possible performance that we can. So always working on that. And then finally, we are dipping our toes into Gutenberg or the block editor. We'll learn a little bit about that soon. This involves both discovery and some development, which is super exciting. And like I said, I'll talk about that in a moment. But before I forget, I want to share that we do have a new roadmap page on our website that details what we're working on now and the things that we've queued up for the future. Again, this is to kind of deliver on that request to have transparency into what we're working on. It's going to stay NetID protected because it has some information about security that we don't want publicly accessible. But I don't know, Matt, if you already threw that in. If you didn't, I can see here.
I didn't because I didn't have the link handy.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Thank you.
There is the roadmap. As I said, you will have to log in with your NetID. It's pretty simple right now. We just targeted some things that we thought might be helpful, a breakdown of kind of what we work on, our strategic priorities, which are accessibility, campus brand, and security and performance. Um, uh, some of our major in progress projects, and then a breakdown of some future projects. We also have a link to the feature request board here in case you're not seeing your feature or your need accommodated in this roadmap. You can kind of let us know. Um, we're committing to kind of quarterly updates to this page. And I think this could evolve over time, but that's where you can look if you are kind of interested in what we're working on. I do see that there are some questions in the chat. Um, let's see. Linda asks, do you think AWS will ever allow use of manifest again so we could do password protected pages? So it's not AWS that's actually the issue. It's our current configuration is just not something that's easily supportable. So could be something in the future that could be made available, but in a different way, if that makes sense. The current setup requires us to maintain like an Apache file for your site. It's very manual on our side. We could look at possibilities for something that's a little bit more self-service, which means the user can set it up a little bit more themselves. Um, but that is something that we're not currently focused on because we are going to be digging in a lot to the block editor in the near future. But if you have that need, please fill out a feature request so we can see how vast that need is or how big that is on campus. That really helps us understand where we might need to prioritize that work.
I'll jump in and also say, depending upon the content and the need, the knowledge base does allow for you to create manifest protected content within it. And so if it is something that is a specific need, you could use the knowledge base as a location to put things behind more significant security if you would like. And that's something that you can reach out to me and to chat about as well.
Awesome. I'm going to exit out of this, go back here, try to find my presenter notes again, which get hidden. Sorry about the screen change. So next, I wanted to talk a little bit about the WordPress block editor, which is also known as Gutenberg. For those of you who aren't familiar, we're just going to kind of give a brief overview today. So first off, what is it? The block editor was released in 2018 and has been adopted by thousands of sites all over the world. It is WordPress's new editor. It replaced what they called the classic editor. Um, it's very similar to what you might experience in like a Wix or a Weebly kind of setup where you can drag and drop blocks and have a little bit more customization available for your site. Um, the UW theme still uses the classic editor. So what you see, all the features of the theme that's built in the classic editor, but we are starting development on a new version that utilizes this block editor. One of the reasons is because a lot of the feedback that we've gotten from you all over the last in probably few years really is that you're looking for more flexibility and control over page content. And that's hard because we have this balance. We need to make sure that things are accessible, campus branded. That tooling that we offer is something that's supportable by our team, but also something that we can train users on and document easily. But we think that there's some potential in this block editor approach, so we're really diving in into it to try to learn what it could do and how it can kind of suit our needs here at UW-Madison. Um, like I said, the benefit is that it affords much more flexibility and control, which is great. The downside is that there will be a learning curve. So we're trying to figure out like how would we approach that in a service like WiscWeb where we do a ton of support. We need to make this something that you all feel is approachable. Um, and despite the learning curve, we still feel like this is the right next step for the UW theme. Um, why do we keep talking about it? Some folks may be wondering, why are we mentioning it but not moving to it? And that's a great question. When it was first released, it was so new that it wasn't something that WiscWeb that we which is like WiscWeb and University Marketing, we collaborate on the UW theme, that we felt very confident in utilizing broadly on campus. It just wasn't ready for what we needed here, but it was also so new that no one really knew very much about it. So what has changed since then? The block editor has had several years to mature now, and it is much more widely used. We now have a lot more guidance, documentation, and resources to rely on when building in the tool. And also, other universities have started to adopt it, so we can kind of learn from their experiences, which is great. And here's an interesting piece for all of you. There's a really big portion of your feature requests that are natively accommodated in this new editor. Um, I kind of touched on this, not only the feature requests that we see, but also things that have been requested via like our surveys and in activities that we've done here in Lunch and Learns. Some of these things are just things that are part of that new editor natively, which is really cool. Things like drag and drop, some robust image display options, templating. Those are all available with Block Editor. So where do things sit today? WiscWeb and University Marketing are collaborating on development of a block editor theme. Much of this is discovery at this point. We're learning about how to build in the tool and what others have done to adapt it. Just getting our feet wet, so to speak. And for next steps, at this point, our team is committing a significant amount of our time to learning and building in the block editor. You'll see this reflected in our roadmap updates that we give at the Lunch and Learn and on that webpage that I shared. You'll see that regularly be kind of a highlight of what we're committing to. Um, and you'll continue to hear updates at future sessions, I think. Any move to a block theme will be a multi-year project for WiscWeb. This would be a fundamental change to the way that WordPress functions, and we don't anticipate that that can happen very quickly. It'll take time for us to develop the new theme and even more time to get sites moved over to it. What that looks like is still up in the air at this time. However, you can rest assured that we will provide training and guidance on the process, and no one will be left alone to make that switch. You'll also be given ample time to make that change. So what questions do you have about the block editor? If you have questions, throw them in the chat. If you're interested in learning more about the block editor, there are tons of resources available. We did just post something on our website that I'll share in the chat right now that has a couple of interesting links if you're just kind of interested in learning more about what it does and what it looks like. But as I said, if you have other questions right away, go ahead and post them in the chat and we'll kind of take a moment to review. So it looks like Rich asked, can it be used interchangeably with Classic or is it one or the other campus wide? That's a great question and something that we're kind of looking into right now. There are several different options for how we could approach this. There are options where we could switch out like the page editor functions that you see, like page elements, but and swap that for like a block style approach, but keep other elements in more of a classic view, or we could really dive in super deep and just switch everything over, which would be a little bit bigger change for folks. There are pros and cons to each. We are really just digging into what are all the options right now and what are the pros and cons so that we feel more confident in making a decision. So nothing has been decided yet, if that's helpful, but there are several options available. Katrina asks, can source code be accessed in the block editor? This ties to a bigger question I have about if we are allowed to embed metapixels on our current site pages. So likely, again, this has not been decided yet. There's so many questions that still need to be answered for this. But I would guess that you would be able to toggle to the source code like you can now within a page, but you wouldn't be able to necessarily add your own custom CSS if that's what you're asking. Um, and we do have ways to embed Metapixel currently. I don't know, Matt, if you're able to grab the KB doc on that. There's a process that you can pull that in through Google Tag Manager, so we'll throw that in the chat. Um, Linda asks, would the block editor take the place of text block or replace everything? Great question, Linda. It wouldn't just be the text block. There would be other functionality within your page that would be replaced likely with the block editor. Again, that's a little bit up in the air of what that looks like. But I would guess that you would see sort of like an alternative to multiple pieces of functionality that you have in the page builder now, built with the block editor instead. A lot of the features that we've custom built for the UW theme are just things that are packaged into the block editor natively. Um, So those are things where we would look at like, okay, what does our accordion panel look like and what do they have in the block editor that could be an equivalent? Do we need to custom build something or could we use theirs? Beth asks if we are gearing up for a major website redesign in the next year, how, if at all, will we be impacted? Great question. Um, I would say, see, we don't have a strong timeline on when this would roll out, but I can say that we would need to give, when I say ample time for people to move over, likely more than a year. Um, so if you're doing a redesign, you would likely have a good amount of time to adapt that new redesign to this approach. Um, I think that kind of brings up the question, like, should we maybe get some guidance for folks on like whether or not they should pause plans for redesigning? I think at this time you're safe to keep moving forward, but that is a question that I'll kind of note for our team to be aware of, that you all might be considering a redesign and don't want to like do it all if you're going to have to change it again in another 6 months or something. Great reminder, Beth. And it looks like Matt added the Facebook Metapixel KB doc for folks that might need that. Other questions?
It's a big conversation, and we
It
want to make
is,
sure
yeah.
we want to make sure we do right by you all
Right.
as well
It's
as
it's helpful
by
for
our
us to know what kinds of things you're interested in learning
community.
too, because we can drop those into future lunch and learn sessions and or a listening session or an article on our website. So please do reach out if there are things that would be helpful for you. A great one is what Beth brought up, where like, what should I do if I'm thinking about a redesign? Great question. Um, we do have that link to resources. I encourage you to check it out just so you kind of understand what it looks like. But as I said, there's so many things that are still up in the air at this time. It looks like Linda asked, would we be able to share content between sites, link news articles, and events? I don't think that that would necessarily be impacted by this as much as other elements, Linda. Great question, though. This doesn't open things up to necessarily be easier to share content between sites. It's still a really risky thing. So it's likely not something that we would make available with this new block editor. But you never know how things are going to change. So, if there was a change to the way that that functioned, maybe it would be something that would look different in the future. Good question. Pause again in case there's others. All right. Well, if you continue to think of questions for Gutenberg or anything else, please do drop it in the chat and we can look into it. I will continue with our next portion of our uh, presentation today, which is demos. An exciting thing today, we have a couple of different demos for you. First, I'm just going to show you a little homepage design example. We've gotten feedback in the past that people love to see examples of different ways that you can build out your site using UW theme. So as an effort to kind of deliver on that request, I've mocked up something in my test site to show you. And then also Matt is going to be doing 2 demos for you for functionality that is coming on Monday, the 12th. So it is not ready yet, but come Monday, you should see an email from us that notifies you when this is ready. 2 really cool features, the image only carousel and padding between content layouts. So first I'm going to go to my web page here. This is not it. This is the article. But I get a ton of pop-ups from Zoom, so I have to kind of move things around. Here is my test site. I'm just showing you an example of another way that you could build out something like a homepage on your website. This one is loosely based on not our university, but a separate university's homepage design. I just kind of looked at it and said, Could we do something like this in the UW theme? And this is the result. So we've started here with a little hero that has a headline, and that calls out like a link that you can click on, followed by just some buttons. Those could be any kind of highlighted buttons that you have. We have a little breakdown of latest news using the featured content block here. I have a one column layout with a background image set. And then I've used a narrowed width approach and applied a drop shadow to this box to just kind of highlight it and overlay it over that image. I've chosen to do a red background here to separate it from the content above in a 2-column layout, with just left aligned text and a little button. Highlighted image with some text, another image here just to show like the variation of imagery. I'm kind of duplicating the style that you saw above with the red background, but just reversing here to give some variation. I've used some styling options that are hard coded with HTML to do this sort of large button. These buttons do not move. They're not like updating or showing movement like some on campus do, but it does allow you to just kind of highlight some major numbers there. Again, kind of using like a background graphic with the 1-column layout and the drop shadow to highlight content here. This shows, I think this is like a button, might be a button cloud here that I did. Um, Again, to just show that you can kind of highlight a few things in a button design and imagery, background graphic, and then two column layout with text blocks that are utilizing again the drop shadow with just centered text. So I will throw this if Matt hasn't already. Yeah, in the chat here if you want to take a look. Please, as an ongoing reminder, this is a test environment where we play around with different layouts and structures and content. It's a little bit goofy if you dig into some of the page content. It's just for playing around with stuff, but I did want to share that as an example for you all today. And now I will kick things over to Matt, who will, I'm going to stop screen sharing here, do the demos on the image only carousel and the new option for adjusting padding between content layouts.
No, this was done with the current editor, Rich.
Great
This is
question. After I,
yeah,
great question.
yeah.
Thank you, Rich. Rich asked, did I do this with the block editor? No, this is to show what you can actually do with the classic editor in WiscWeb right now.
Can the buttons be set so they're all the same size regardless of amount of text in it?
Not
I
currently,
don't
but
think so.
you
No.
could file that as a feature request.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the button cloud currently is adjusting based on the text, but Linda's asking for a way to try to set the buttons to be the same size regardless of the amount of text.
Yeah.
That is currently not a feature.
Okay, I think I'm sharing. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so I actually have 3 updates. One is new as of yesterday because we have pushed our plugin updates to our QA environment, which is where I'm going to do these demos out of. But one of the plugins that's going to get updated is WP data tables. And you all know how much we love our plugin updates when they drop things in unexpectedly. So WP data tables in the current version that it's going to be going to, when you create a table from scratch, you are now given a list of templates that you can build your tables off of or base your tables off of. I took a look at these. So if for those of you who remember, we updated to Gravity Forms a while ago, where Gravity Forms added in a slew of templates. Except when Gravity Forms did it, they added in templates that promoted add-ons for their products, which we weren't going to continuously keep adding on because it costs a lot. We have to support it. We never know about the security functions of adding on all those things. With data tables, all these they are design ideas. So I just wanted to show this quick just to kind of show you what this new thing you'll see when you start creating these types of tables in the background. So it's all being generated for you, and then you have to go in and edit out the text that you want to edit.
They have a typo on the word websites there.
Do they?
10 websites.
Webstays.
Yeah.
Webstay. So I haven't delved into much here. Obviously, you can see there is code involved with this stuff and things like that. So use with caution. I can try and help as much as I can, but a lot of times I'd say you're just better off trying to do this on your own and tinkering rather than trying to use their templates. So good, but I wanted you guys to see that just so you all know that that stuff will exist. Okay, demo time. So I have a page here. It's the February demo testing. First thing we're going to take a look at is the image only carousel. So it is a page element that you will see in the list. It is right there underneath image gallery. Please note that as we are changing this to the image only carousel, we are also changing the existing carousel that we have to be called the image and content carousel. Just so we can differentiate between those two so you know what you're getting. So image only carousel, we click on that. A couple of things here, and I'll talk about this in a second. Obviously, you can see there is no specific information right here right away, but you can add images. So I will click on add image. A couple of things here. One, first and foremost, you can do one image at a time. So I'll do Bucky. Make sure that it has alt text associated with it, and then click select. And then I'll click add image. And I can do it that way, one by one. Or I can just go click, let's see here, hold down my control key, click, 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 or command key for those of you on Mac, the multi-select option. There they all are checked, click select, and they all get dropped in. So I can do this en masse versus one by one. Obviously, you can see you can add a custom link to it if you so desire. Let's add it to the first two. Nothing too exciting there. And I'm going to leave this alone for right now just so we can kind of see what it looks like when I update it. So I'll click update. Then we will bounce out to the page right here. And then here's what it looks like. It's just a slider. Once you get to the end, go back to the beginning. If you mouse over, you can see that this one is linked. If I click on it, it takes me to wis.edu. Same with this one here. It is linked. You get the standard mouse over right there. Okay. So back over to the edit area where you can actually increase the height if you so desire. If you have some images that have some higher quality that you want to zoom in on, or if you want it to just kind of be a string of images, you can reduce it. So I'm going to go all the way up to the top. We have a max of 680. I will update it. Do a refresh. And now this is what it looks like at max height. And then we'll take her down to thumbnail size. 100. I'm actually going to go 150. I prefer that for my thumbnail size. Update. And now you can see a little bit more for that. So again, just giving you a different option for adding in the different images that you might want to display on your site. So now let's tinker around with some other things. So I'm going to minimize my one column layout. I'm going to add a two column layout. I'm going to add just a text block on the left side, drop in some inspirational Bob Ross text for us all, because looking outside, we all need a little bit more sunshine in our life. And then on the right side, I'm going to add the image only carousel again, so you can see that it can go into a 2-column layout as well. I'll add images, add some images. Let's see if I can get copyright infringement. Yeah, we'll just throw in those 4 there. Do as I say, not as I do. Make sure you add alt text to all of your images. And I'm going to take these up to 680. And then I'll update. And then you can kind of see where we're standing right now. Okay, so notice the what's happening here. So I need to make sure that my images fit the space. So I could do a few things there. I could change this display setting here to be left 40, right 60. Let's see how that treats me. Still a little bit too much, so I'm going to take this down to 500. 503. We'll leave it at that. There we go. Now that fits in. No. Illidan's still can't see the other wing. Anyways, now you can see the tinkering process of using this, because the images that you use you're gonna have some tinkering there as well, potentially there. Regardless, what I do want to show you is the top padding and the bottom padding. So this is the other new thing that's coming with the theme update next week, which is the spacing between them. So you can add more padding if you'd like above and below, or less padding above and below. So I'm going to go less on top, and then bottom padding doesn't matter right now because I don't have anything underneath it, but you'll see in a second here if I click
Matt,
update. Go ahead.
can you show how you got to that area just in case folks aren't familiar?
Yeah, it's in the gear icon. It's in the display settings there.
Thank you.
Yep. So that's none. So then we go. So you can kind of see here's what the padding looks like now. I added the headline. That buffer's there. So let's go to none top padding. Here's what it looks like. Moved it up just a little bit. So tightening up some of that space there. So now what I do, let's see if I go here to this one. Hey, thank you. And I do bottom padding, none, update. So here's what it looks like. Tightened it up way too much. So what you can see here is like, there's going to be some balance on how much you want to play around with this. Will the padding option auto-populate? Yes, it's going into this area, the display settings area here. So it's going to populate into here. So you'll have to go in and update your layouts, but it is being added to all of the layout options. So I'm going to go back to default for this one. Click update. So there we go. So that tightens that up a little bit more. Let's see here. Any questions? Nope.
I want to call out a couple things. One is that these additions were directly related to actually 3 feature requests that we received. One was having a more variable picks or options for image display in a carousel format that didn't necessarily require text. And then another was, well, there were 2 things that we kind of feel like this helps with. One was just adjusting the padding between content layouts in general. This allows you so much more flexibility when you're building out like different page designs. But then also we've had a request to allow for like a 1-column text intro followed by like a 2 or 3 column layout. So you might see this on like other sites across campus where you can kind of have like a introduction text above your 2 or 3 column layout essentially. So Matt's going to show what this looks like, but this is possible now with this new feature because you can just remove that padding between the different content layouts to make it look like they're part of the same block. So shout out to the folks who submitted these as feature requests. And also, huge shout out to our 2 developers of these features. Andrea created the image only carousel and Scott created the padding. But all of our developers, including Andy, do work on testing these features and doing like code reviews and things like that. So just snaps all around for the devs.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you jump into the page builder as well in a moment, Matt?
Bingo.
There are a couple other new things going on in that gear icon in the settings. Yeah, so a couple other things that got added on the left side. There's a hide this row option. So that's a new feature as well. What that'll do is if you enable that, it will keep the content saved in the page, but none of that will actually output to the page. So some use cases there is if you have like seasonal content or copy that you want to kind of keep saved, but you don't want to delete, you can turn that off and it won't output to the page, but you'll still have it in the page builder for when you need it again. The other one is the content width one. So we had some kind of options in the customizer added in the one of the more recent updates to change the width of content layouts. So by default, all the content layouts will follow whatever you have selected for your site, but if you want to change them on an individual basis, that option is also there now. So you can do some kind of messing around with the widths of things as well as the padding. And yes, Andrea pointed out in chat. So there were kind of some previous things where content would be potentially put out on the page, but just not visible. This fully stops it from getting outputted. So no search engines or bots or anything will be able to see that content. It's only available in the admin UI while hidden.
Will these changes be available to sites using the UW theme? Yes, this is going into the UW theme. This is a UW theme release. However, Sandra, just because I want to make sure, and I'll say this pointedly to everyone who's on this call who is a UW theme user, but maybe not in WiscWeb. We update the theme regularly. By we, I mean the devs, because they do all the work and I just take credit for it. We update the theme regularly. It is on you, the user of the theme, if you're not in WiscWeb, to manually update the UW theme. And I wanted to say that pointedly because Jenna and I have had lots of consults with lots of groups who use the UW theme, but are hosted at Do It Web Hosting. But because we work on the theme, we will try our best to help people out. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen people who are like a year behind on their UW theme version. So things are broken in their site because we've updated it so much that stuff doesn't work anymore for what they've been doing. So yes, it will be in the UW theme, but you have to make sure that you do the updates to get to the newer versions of the UW theme. So
And we'll work on, there's so many ways that you can adapt some of these features now. Something that we hadn't had time for just because of things like the Applebot issue last week, but we are hoping to have some maybe like mock-ups of what you can do now with knowing that these features are available. Some of the page layouts that I've created are so much more customizable now with these features. So once this rolls out, we can kind of show you some of that at future sessions. And yeah, example page. Yep. And we did have a request for seeing the back end of that test site that I showed earlier, so you could see kind of what makes up the page. So we can definitely show that as well. If anyone needs to jump off, feel free, but we can kind of show you that as like a final wrap up to the meeting today. Let
While
me.
Oh,
Well, you jump over to that. I just wanted to say that the with the padding changes, there are some safeguards in place. So I believe kind of the biggest one is if you try and make the padding really small on the top of the first element, it might not remove or change the padding as much as you'd expect because, with like breadcrumbs and titles and other things that are typically at the top of the page, we do have it set up to not just smush all of that together. So just be aware that there are safeguards in place so that content isn't overlapping and all jammed together and not accessible. We do still consider that and try and build in stuff to kind of prevent that from happening.
Yeah, we're
yeah.
sort of leaving it to you to make good decisions. Like, consider what is user friendly when you're building out this content. This could allow you to do some things that aren't as user friendly, but we really request, I mean, like, get another set of eyes on it if you're not sure, I think is a good approach.
Yeah. I was
Um,
gonna say, like, be critical of your work. Like,
be critical, yeah.
go ahead and test it out, but be
Yes.
critical of your work. Like, look at it, and yes, what Scott said. With
Yeah,
the more that we give you and allow you to do, the more is on you to make good decisions when it comes to design and usability and the user experience of your site.
yeah. For those of you who are watching after this, Scott said in the chat, with great power comes great responsibility, and that's very true.
Rich,
Yeah.
Rich with a great line. When in doubt, give default a shout. Absolutely.
Like it. All right, so I'm going to
Absolutely.
share the back end of the page that I showed earlier so that folks that were interested in seeing how I kind of set that up can see it. If you need to jump out, you can, but I'll share that now. Matt, can you see my screen?
Yippers.
Cool. All right, so we've got, let's see, at the start of the page, we've just got a little hero carousel with a headline. We can show that here. So I've added a hero carousel image that's set to 1600 by 500. Um, I've selected this headline option and added a headline field. I've also toggled on the link option here, added a call to action, and added an external link. So that kind of captures what we're doing just in this image area at the top. Um, Scrolling down here, I really hate screen share in Zoom. Um, we have just this little like button setup, which it's just a one column layout here that I've changed the background choice to Badger Red. Again, I'm clicking the gear icon to get into the settings and then changing background. And then I have a group of links menu that I've chosen to style as buttons. And I have them set to red. And so on a red background, they'll appear reversed. I've chosen the large view just to make them a little bit bigger. And then here are my group of links. So again, that's kind of this section here in the buttons. The next section is just a 3-column latest news area. So I have my 3-column layout. In each of the columns, I have a featured content block. I've customized the content. I didn't have it pull from an existing page or post. I've set a featured image for each. A title, I didn't add description text. You could. I just chose not to because it was styled to look like another university's homepage. But I have added a link. In all cases, it's just the WiscWeb website, but you can kind of see that. So that is how this is set up. Next, I think this was a question that you had was, how do you do this like background graphic behind text? So the way I have completed that is I added a 1-column layout here. For my background choice, I've chosen upload image. I have photoshopped this image separately to change the opacity and make it look a little bit lighter, so that it doesn't overpower the background too much. I've uploaded that and I added a little text block here. This actually is a great example because it shows what I can actually do with the new padding options come next week. I added a text block above and below so that I get a little bit more of the background here with that padding option that Scott has built out. You will be able to add a little bit more padding at the top and bottom to accomplish that without having to put in an empty text block, if that makes sense. So that's just an image with like a left aligned image with text to the right. This red background is very similar to what we had up above with the buttons. I've got a 2-column layout. In the display settings. I've chosen Badger Red, and I've just got an image on one side. It's just a 50-50 split, and text and a button on the right. This little section again is something that could be really neat with the new padding options. If I wanted to, I could minimize this padding here that appears between the two images. That's something I'll be able to do with those new options. But for now, it is 2 separate content layouts. I've got one content layout that just has a little image in a text block, followed right by the 2-column layout here with a 50-50 split. Both of these have the background set to white so that it feels like they are part of the same layout. But as I said, in the future, you could adjust that even more to make them feel very cohesive. We kind of went over this one. It's just the reverse of the other. The numbers, I think I mentioned, I did this with HTML code. We're not going to teach you how to do this. You got to learn HTML, but if you want to delve into it, you can. This is possible. All I did in the source code was I added a style tag and a span style here that is changing the color to the Badger Red and changing the font size and the weight. I think I did some styling on both pieces of text there. And again, we have a background graphic. We kind of went over that. This Explore Madison piece, I believe, is another button cloud. So I'll go down to that section. So we have a 1-column layout here with a white background. I've added a group of links styled as buttons again. That's just a little button cloud, the back end. We've kind of gone over how you can accommodate this. I did make the background color on both of these items the same so that they feel like they're part of the same grouping. Again, you could adjust padding in the future on that. We've kind of gone over how to add the background color. I don't know if I showed this though. So you can add, let's see. All right, scrolling down to where I added this. Okay, here. I added a background to that section, but then I also in my text block applied drop shadow, and that is what made that box kind of stand out on top. If you don't have the apply drop shadow or apply UW card style enabled, it's not going to overlay over the background image very nicely, so it won't be readable. And then the final one is just a 2-column layout, both with text blocks with a red background. So you can kind of scroll down and see this. I've added the Badger Red background color, a 50-50 split here, text block, an image followed by some text and a button. And then I've applied drop shadow to those. We have a lot of questions in the chat, so I'm going to pause here.
Yeah, we've been answering.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Let's see. What width did you use for the background image? I think I just used 1600 on those, but you could do a little bit bigger. We have some guidance, I think, now in the KB for setting that background image. I'll try to grab that in a second. You have a row listed in the photo block. Had a row listed in the photo block. Laura, which one is that? I'm not sure which one you're referring to there. Is there an option to change the photo transparency in WordPress? No. Is that an available feature for the future? There's not currently anything that allows you to adjust that transparency of an image. I believe, let me know, devs, if I'm wrong on this, but that might be something that's more native to the block editor. Not that we couldn't add something like that. We don't currently have a feature request for it. So that's just a plug for maybe submitting that as a feature request. But yes, you can, as Matt said, you could do that in Photoshop. Totally.
And at the end of the day, I would always recommend using Photoshop to do my image editing rather than trying to do it in the confines of another application like a web
Yes.
application like WordPress or something like that. Just because I feel like you're confined within the WordPress application, and just Photoshop's just more robust, so you can do a lot more with it. Opacity, you can change the opacity, you can change the color levels, you can cut things out, you can crop, you can do all of that in one fell swoop versus I feel like it's a little more cumbersome within the WordPress application.
Yes, and it looks like Matt answered the question about like the background sizing. So, 1600, you could do bigger than that, but that's what I've used on this page. For width on those background images that display appear in the background here. It looks like Linda says one of the photos of the capital section on the top, the text and the top of the photo don't line up. Is this the one that you're talking about, Linda? Yes. So, yep, it looks like there's like some padding above the heading here so that they're not perfectly lined up. Honestly, it doesn't bother me, so I just didn't even notice it, but likely just due to some padding for that heading.
Yeah, it's the heading. The heading gets the H value, the heading one, the headings 2 through whatever. They have padding automatically applied to them, and so therefore you will get that top padding as well as that bottom padding beneath it, the way the text below it
Yes.
is offset.
And I will say, I know you've asked for kind of like the mock-up of this page. It's so much easier to go into these discussions one-on-one with folks to understand what they're interested in doing or accomplishing, what things they like and they want to know more about. So if you are interested in setting up pages like this, like doing a little bit more with your website content, I would highly recommend that you schedule time with either Matt or myself in office hours. Matt, I don't know if you're able to drop that link
Okay.
in.
Yep, I'm
Thank
looking
you.
for it now.
Yeah, so that's precisely what we're here for. We meet with folks all the time to troubleshoot things like that. And if you're like, hey, I really like this element of this site, how could I accomplish something like this with the UW theme? We're happy to try to help troubleshoot that for you.
I've already gotten 2 office hour requests during this
There
meeting.
we go. Yes. Wow, that was fast. Yeah, so we're happy to help. I think particularly with some of these new features that provide a little bit more flexibility, we can also help advise on how to get the best or the most of those features. We are at 1 o'clock already. Holy cow, that went fast. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. I can hang around if, well, Linda, if you go up, Linda's looking for the link to the feature request. That is now an element of that roadmap page that I shared earlier. So reminder on that if you're ever looking for the link to our feature request, it is in the roadmap page, but I'll also grab that for you, Linda. It's in our KB space as well. I'm always
It's on our main menu as well on our site.
Yes, it's on the main menu on our site.
We're trying to put it everywhere.
I'm always going to link to the KB page because there's
Yes,
some really
it
key
has the
instructions
steps.
on that page that tell you how to log into it. But I did throw the knowledge base document in the chat there so that you can see that. Uh, Sue asked, will the KB have a rundown of these latest elements updates? Yes. Oh, are we adding KB documentation for them? Yes, we do. We have them queued up. We will post them on Monday when this releases. So we will definitely have knowledge-based documentation. We'll also work on maybe like a page design that shows off some of the features as well.
Yeah.
Um, Caitlin asked, sorry if I missed this. Are there new features already available? I'm not seeing the ability to adjust it. No, Caitlin, these come out
Monday.
on Monday. So Monday morning is when we'll be doing the release, and you'll see an email from us that talks about these changes.
Yep.
Oh, yes, good point. Next Monday, not this Monday.
Next Monday. Yes, not this past.
Good question.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording there since we're at time. Bingo.